chartered in the late 19th century and built in stages from 1864 through 1883. From the shipping port of Duluth, Minnesota to the Puget Sound of Washington, the Northern Pacific Railroad moved goods transmitted from the Great Lakes region over and through the Rocky Mountains to shipping ports on the West Coast. The European settlement of the town of Brainerd was conceived by NP Railroad President John Gregory Smith, with the railroad building a heavy equipment maintenance shop and corporate office at the site where the town would develop. Lumber and paper from the vast Minnesota forest would be moved west by the railroad, aiding in the westward expansion of the U.S. under the belief of manifest destiny. The site of the NP shops came into private ownership after its closure and has recently been redeveloped as a commercial real estate and event space venture. This is the Northern Pacific Center in Brainerd, Minnesota. The Northern Pacific story in Brainerd is the classic American story of European settlement in the 19th century. The town that became Brainerd created itself from the people who built, operated, and benefited from the railroad's western expansion. A railroad shop was built by the 1870s to service primitive steam locomotives. The U.S. government-bonded capital available to the railroad erected a downtown in the style of brick and wood that became the style of Midwest cities for most of a century to come. Even an opera house was established for the worker citizens and their neighboring towns across the Cuyuna Range in north-central Minnesota. The shops are located on modern Highway 210 as it departs Brainerd. The Clock Tower building greets guests today as it would have greeted employees and business partners of the late 19th century. A great deal of MOW equipment is seen set idle in the old yard. This would have been the NP main line for the formative years of Minnesota's place in the story of westward expansion. It still sees a number of BNSF crews here on weekdays. We stopped on a Sunday afternoon as we departed Brainerd. The property can be visited during business hours and is presented as an interpretive historic site where Northern Pacific locomotives and freight cars would have seen regular overhauls. The brick buildings are in decent shape considering how many winters they've endured. These first rows of buildings are currently vacant, but are roughly finished enough for future development as retail space or whatever the city may permit to license. There's a lot of possibilities yet for these boiler divisions and machine shop. The retail offerings as of August 2023 were ice cream, a boutique, a coffee house, a tavern, and a barbecue supply store. By 3 p.m. Sunday, most stores are either preparing to close or have been for a while. What is now Central Parking was formerly the Roundhouse, which sat 316 feet in diameter. This building was labeled a storehouse by Crow Wing County's historic documents, available through the link in this video's description. The power plant building on the edge of the property is off limits to visitors. Whether it served the rail shops or the town at large is unclear, but Wikimapia cites its closure in the 1970s. BNSF's active rail property is far less busy today, with operations between Duluth and Brainerd for freight and industrial products being more sporadic or seasonal these days. The property is being marketed as an event center with a focus on weddings and other family gatherings, a safe bet for the Brainerd Lakes region. The character of the site has a shopping mall feel akin to Bandana Square in St. Paul, another former railroad shop. I wouldn't be surprised if a hotel might be considered for the site, but for whatever businesses might occupy them, it's good to see these old railroad buildings still being used for business by the citizens of the town that grew up around them. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more buildings with stories down the road. A historic diagram compiled by Ann M. Nelson follows.